Hello everyone, and welcome to an extremely hot and humid Sabi Sands. It's about 34 degrees Celsius, 92 degrees Fahrenheit, and Jamie and I both set out in search of shade. Those were our primary focuses for the beginning of the drive. It is cooking out here, and due to the immense heat, the 10 to 15 minutes that we've been driving around, we have hardly seen any signs of life. Everything is doing what we've done and come to find some shade. It will change as the afternoon progresses, and it'll be worth noting how much the bush does start to come alive as the hours roll by. But what we still have a chance of doing is checking out the water holes now in the hope that there could be some signs of life seeking the cool moisture and mud that they can throw over their bodies, especially the animals like the elephants. My name is Scott, if you are joining for the first time, and I mentioned briefly earlier that Jamie is also out in another vehicle. So she's going to be searching the kind of northern portions of Djuma to start with, and I'm going to be searching the southern. Not too different from our plans this morning. Two other vital members of the team are Nikki and Jess in the final control room. And I almost forgot Jandre, who is on camera this afternoon with me. For the new viewers, just to clarify, this is a live safari. What you're seeing is happening this very second, and we would love to hear your thoughts, comments and questions as the safari unfolds. And to do that, you can hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or send an email through to questions@wildearth.tv. We didn't have any luck with the predators this morning. The Birmingham boys are on the northern boundary of Buffalo's Hook with the Kruger National Park. It sounds like they were chasing around the two Nkahuma lioness that we saw yesterday afternoon. There was no sign of Karula, the female leopard, who we think may possibly have cubs. There've been no confirmed photos and or visual of her suckle marks, but Aubrey see some suckle marks on her yesterday evening when we saw her very briefly after she took a drink at the Buffalo's Hook Dam. But that's certainly exciting prospects, and I'm sure there will be some vehicles snooping around the Buffalo's Hook Dam area. That's where we think she may be denning her cubs. It's all huge speculation at this stage, but speculation nonetheless, and exciting speculation at that. Oh, a little bit of a surprise. Now I'm going to stop here because had we have not seen this tree that's been pushed into the road, we could have got quite badly strung up on some of these very, very hooked thorns. I'm guessing these ones up here might be the best ones for Jandre to show you. So these acacia trees do have quite nasty thorns, and we wouldn't like to get strung up in this. The leaves will grow. They're looking very small at the moment, but they've just started blooming. It is springtime here in the Sabi Sands, and the vegetation is booming with growth. And that would have been an elephant that pushed over this tree so that it could more easily access these leaves without having to stretch its trunk up too far. That way they can also actually feed these thorny branches directly into their mouth with their trunk and chew on them whilst they're on the tree. A little bit easier than snapping them off. Back to the recap of this morning though. Saw our first dung beetles, which was wonderful. They were rolling a massive ball of dung about the size of a tennis ball, and I'm sure now that we've seen the first ones out, we're going to see a lot more digging through the piles of elephant dung and buffalo dung, looking for food as well as a nesting site for them to lay their eggs in. But we did have female leopard tracks this morning. Not sure who it was, possibly Shadow, possibly Kwatile, coming north into Djuma off our southern boundary. And I took a short walk in the area but didn't come up with anything, sadly. Quite a few elephant tracks around. I went past a mud wallow earlier. I can also see some on the road here, but sadly they are coming away from the waterhole. I'm not sure if the light's going to be okay, but we may be able to show you a few of the... there you can see the pads coming down the road, maybe further up the road. Oh, there we go, that looks good. It's difficult to see here because the sun's quite high above us. It's not at a very low angle, which is best for tracking. But the shiniest, smoothest part of the track looks like it's on the opposite end of the track to us, indicating that's where the heel stepped down with the most pressure. So the shiniest, most clear part of the track indicates the back, and therefore these elephants have already passed away from the treehouse waterhole that we're approaching. But there's lots of ellies around at the moment, so I'm sure it won't be long before we track some down. Jamie spends a lot of time with a large herd of elephant that are quite easy to tell apart from the others. There's one with curly ears that kind of curl forward. There's a bit of a cartilage problem, probably a birth defect, and also one of the big cow's tusks grow the wrong way around, if that makes any sense. I think she's been dubbed Fang, an interesting name for an elephant, but her tusk is quite unique. So I'm told there's a very large hole on my back. I actually haven't seen it. Oh, there it is. It has grown quite dramatically. I felt it tear a little bit more this morning, Lisa. And no, I wasn't playing with lion. That would have been a far better story. But I just leaned forward to do something in the vehicle and it ripped. Thankfully, these shirts are very thin and keep us cool in the hot weather. But it looks like I'm going to be needing to do some patchwork before this one falls off me. It remained quite a small hole for quite some time. I got strung up in an acacia very similar to the one that was pushed into the road behind us. Can't remember exactly what I was doing, but it was an acacia that strung me up and put that little nick in the shirt initially. Oh, well, it looks like we're in luck. I'm just going to stop here briefly just for Jean-Ray to give you a glimpse of where we're going to go a bit later. But I want to get down into the basin of this waterhole. Oh, hello guys, these are our resident saddle-billed storks. This I'm going to have to stop here for. There's two of them, a male and a female, who we get to see quite regularly here at Djuma. Beautiful bright red and yellow beaks. But interestingly enough, they just haven't seemed to... Oh, Jean-Ray spotted another one. They just haven't seemed to get very relaxed with us, even though we spend quite a lot of time watching them. A bit camera shy. But we have seen some great sightings of them. Jamie saw one battling to swallow a catfish just a few days ago, and I've managed to see one successful catfish swallowing not so long ago. So they're aquatic hunters that probably have been chased out of their hunting grounds by all these Cape buffalo that are in the waterhole taking a wallow. Maybe there'll be some dung beetles here, as there's no doubt going to be quite a lot of buffalo dung. These guys have probably spent a couple of hours here now in the heat of the day. But the dung beetles will be seeking out the freshest dung, not the old pats that have become hard and difficult to sculpt and mold into these perfect round balls. What I'm doing is just trying to strategically position us so that we're in a nice shady spot where we can get comfortable and examine what's going on here with these sleepy boys. Oh, it must be nice in there. Nice cool mud. Although I must say, when this mud begins to dry, it pulls very tightly on your skin and creates a hard shell that covers your body. But it's all part of the buffalo's plans, because they'll then rub off this hard shell that will break off and peel with its parasites, which will be starting to increase dramatically in number in the summer months. Hello, mister. Why are you looking so grumpy? Fair enough, I agree. It is very hot today. So you can put your grumpy face on. You'll notice a few oxpeckers on the back of the buffalo in the center of your screen now. Oh, look at the catfish's tail in the background. Not a good time of the year for the poor catfish. They're getting both attacked by the avian predators, fish eagles, marabou storks, the saddle-billed storks that we've just seen. But despite their attack from predators, I mean, imagine what they must be thinking. Tough times in there. I don't know what they're eating. It's just thick mud that they're basically swimming around and expending a lot of energy whilst doing so. So they'll be seriously looking forward to the next rains. Those oxpeckers obviously just taking a break from feeding. You would have noticed some of them actually had their mouths wide open, or their beaks rather, and that's how they'll sweat and thermoregulate. Just like a dog or a cat, they are panting and taking a break from helping the buffalo rid them tick loads. Oh, good work there, Jean-Ray. This one's found a new dinner table to go and search on. I'm quite surprised. It looks like some of these buffalo are already starting to move off, but this one is enjoying. It's kind of a love-hate relationship having these oxpeckers. I'm sure the buffalo know that they're doing them some good, but when they start getting into the private areas, like in the ears, around the eyes and the nostrils, the buffalo get a little bit frustrated and then try and shake them off. Well, the way this big old boy is moving gives you a good idea of how hot it is. He's reluctant to put one hoof in front of the other. Look there, it's sweating. You may have seen its beak open there. Well, it sounds like there's some interesting action across at the Djuma waterhole, where a marabou stork is trying to feed on a terrapin, a freshwater turtle. That's going to be an epic showdown to see unfold. Sadly, I don't think we're close enough to race there, although it is tempting. We'll maybe stand by to see how it goes about trying to swallow this very difficult prey item. Imagine trying to digest the shell of a terrapin within your stomach. Well, I'm glad we arrived here when we did, because now there are no more buffalo in the water. You can see what I mean about how that mud really does cake on the skin of the buffalo, and you'll see all those oxpeckers are busy panting. I guess they're almost sitting on a giant solar panel. That black hide of the buffalo must be attracting a lot of heat. But at least they're getting a free ride. Well, I must say, I'm very surprised that these buffalo are moving in such hot weather. But obviously the fresh green grass that is quite abundant now is enough to lure them from their sleepy wallows. Some other animals that are also busy on the lookout for some good opportunities to feed are some elephant that Jamie have found for you. So we're going to pop you into her vehicle for some time to spend with the elephants, and we're going to keep searching for anything else.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. And I think that Andrew and I have found ourselves probably in the best place we could be on this blazing hot afternoon, which is right in the middle of a drainage line with some elephants. Hello, big girl. Hello. It's all right. They got a little bit startled. Not because of us, but because there's two young bulls fighting at the back, and they've just decided they're done with this. Unfortunately, obviously, we can't go any further into the drainage line. First of all, because it's too thick, but also because we're going to cut signal. Let me try and see if I can get a view of these two boys tussling about here, and then we shall have to loop around if we want to get those visual of those ellies once again. Now, I'm not sure if this is the same herd that we were watching this morning. I haven't seen any individuals that I recognize. What you boys doing? Poking him in the bottom. Oh, pushed him right forward there. What you guys gonna do, huh? Being prodded onwards, whether he wants to go or not, with a tusk to the bottom. Okay, well, that was a lovely elephant sighting. It is somewhat brief. Now, I have marked this spot as an area where our signal completely disappears from just past this tree. So I think that we might have to turn around and start heading around the block to see if we can follow up with these ellies once again. Personally, I'm holding thumbs that it's going to be the same herd we had this morning, with the one with a backwards pointing tusk and a tiny, tiny little baby who's only about 1 or 2 months old. And then the one with the very floppy ears, very distinctive, very large, relaxed herd. I think it probably is them. They came south towards the dam. I'm quite happy for you to stay with me. It's so beautiful down here. You can have a look at why I said it was the perfect place to be spending an afternoon that is as hot as this. Are you trying to get those elephants?
No, I'm just showing them.
Oh, showing them the draining line. It is beautiful down here. It's thick, the shade is here, it's nice and cool. It feels a little bit like when you're in a kitchen cooking something and you open up the oven and you get that whoosh of air coming out. That's what it feels like this afternoon. It's still going to be a beautiful day, and it's going to make for a beautiful evening. stunning tambuerti tree clusters. Now, I know that Scott's mentioned to you what the temperature is, and I wouldn't be surprised if it would be even warmer if it weren't for the odd cool breeze. It's at least taking the edge off a little bit. But at 34 degrees, it is pretty warm. Okay, let me find my magic way out of this drainage line. I got lost in here one night with Jeandre after we were with the buffalo kill that the Nkahumas were feeding on. That was just off in there. And I got completely lost and had no idea where I was. I'm actually going to head up and out of the drainage line here, just because the elephants have blocked off a lot of the rest of it. There was quite an easy road through, but it is no longer as easy. It's actually a bit tricky now. Oh, back out into the oven that is the Sabi Sands at the moment. Now, I first spotted the elephants in this block, but they moved across into the drainage line, which I certainly don't blame them for. So I'm going to loop around the other side, just because I know that Gowrie cutline notoriously cuts our signal. But let's see if we can relocate them on the other end. Now, is this herd from this morning? They spread out quite a bit. It was actually quite interesting behavior to watch. How some of the big females stayed behind with that female and her tiny calf, so that she had the option of lying down to sleep. They stayed with her and they slowly spread southwards. So I'm sure this is part of the same herd, or I think it's part of the same herd. It's just a matter of relocating the others. I mentioned to Scott before we went out this afternoon that I was going to stop and sit under the jackalberry all afternoon and see what comes to us. A big jackalberry on Gowrie cutline. There we go. That to me looked like the best place to find shade. I mentioned that this morning, for those of you who might not have been watching, that we saw an elephant with a backwards tusk, and it's quite spectacular and very unusual looking. It curves, her left tusk is perfectly normal, perfectly curved, and the right one curves backwards in on itself, and it's long. I mean, it's about this long. Whoops, should probably drive at the same time. But it is very, very long. And it hasn't broken off, which is astounding, and it curves perfectly, like somebody had just twisted it round and had pointed it downwards. Hello, Nyala. Stop for a brief moment to say hello to this bull. Quite beautiful. He's also taking full advantage of the shade in the drainage line. Look at that white fringe of hair flopped over his back. It's incredible to watch them when they fight each other and they put on their big display where they puff up their fur and do a little slow motion dance around another male to show them how big and scary they are. It's highly entertaining to watch, especially when you get about 4 or 5 of them doing it at the same time. Now for first-time viewers, this is a nyola, and when they puff themselves out like that, the bulls, it's known as piloerection. So they really puff themselves up and make themselves look much, much bigger. And that ridge of fur rises right up to stand on end. Just like when we get goosebumps when we're cold. It sticks right up. And they fluff their big white tails up, and then they do this incredibly fun slow motion. They step right up, they lift their legs right up in slow motion and hold it for a moment and then put them down again, and they do what's known as lateral presentation, so presenting each other to side on to show how big and scary they are by doing the world's slowest dance. It's hilarious to watch. Now, apparently bushbuck do it as well, male bushbuck, which are related to the kudu, but much, much smaller and less fluffy. And I must say that's something I've never seen. So apparently the lucky FC girls got to see it on their way there this afternoon. Those beautiful stripes on his face. Loving those bits of new grass. And this is a really nice mature bull. He's not young. It's probably about 6 or 7 with those impressively ivory tipped horns. He's quite big. And they're always the first animals to get used to the presence of humans at a camp or something like that. And it was the first animal that Lexi, the dog of mine, got used to seeing. She grew up watching them feed in our garden. She, as a consequence, never had any desire to chase them. She went through a stage at about 6 months old where she did try to play with them, but it didn't work too well. And there was one particular instance where she came barreling between my legs, followed very closely by an Inyala bull of this size. Which was the first and the last time she tried to start a game with a male Inyala. She learned her lesson very quickly. Alright, thank you, boy. You look like you're heading off, and I think so we should as well, because I have a question to answer from Pamela. And I was in the middle of leading into that question before I got distracted by the Inyala. So, whilst I continue on my way, let us talk a little bit about that female with the inverted tusk. Now, Pamela, you were wondering what it was that causes that. Was it some kind of injury or damage to the tusk, or did it just grow that way? And I think there's two possibilities. One is that it did just grow that way. Now, I know that in human beings, sometimes your teeth just erupt in a slightly crooked manner. I know that wine wisdom teeth on the bottom came in sideways, completely sideways. And that might have been something that happened to her. It might have been just a little genetic defect there. So it's interesting that it was one and not the other. The other possibility is maybe when it was growing, she knocked it in some way and slightly damaged the root system so that it knocked it a little bit skew, and it consequently just started growing in that direction to the point that it couldn't change in any way. And I suppose the other option is that there was some kind of infection when she was young, much like we might get a tooth abscess or something like that that might have pushed it into growing the wrong way. Still very interesting. I don't know the answer for sure. I have seen 1 or 2 of them in my time, but hers was particularly spectacular. It was long. And I was quite astounded by the fact that she didn't manage to break it off. Now once I've followed up with these ellies to see if I can get them, unfortunately I have a horrible feeling they're all packed in the drainage line in the worst possible signal area. But once it starts to get a little bit cooler, we have another mystery that I didn't finish solving, or at least I didn't finish fully investigating this morning. Now, this morning when I set out in the sunrise safari, there was reports of hyena chasing a baby hippo around the dam, and it looked as though they'd managed to bite it, and there was a lot of speculation about why this little hippo might be out on his own, or her own. And I actually reversed accidentally. I was not really aiming for that, but his tracks came all the way, almost from Torchwood, all on his own. And it sounds to me that the updates I got from the viewers of the dam camera, they said to me that he looked really tiny, barely bigger than the hyena, which puts him at a couple of months old. I don't know why he was wandering around on his own. I just know that he was alone for a long stretch down this road before he got to the dam and before the hyenas got to him. Now, I checked around the area. I didn't find any tracks coming back this way. And what I want to do a little bit later, obviously because I love spotted hyenas, but also because I want to see if we can get any more evidence as to what might have happened to that poor little hippo last night. I'm going to pop into the hyena den when it gets a bit cooler. It will be interesting to see what we see there. Our Nyala bull friend, nice big male, very impressive looking, and I mentioned that they do those hilarious dances. They do look quite hysterical. And Sharon, you suggested that they are the Fabio of the antelope world. Absolutely. They are highly entertaining to watch, especially when they are conducting those minor disagreements. I've only ever seen Nyala come to physical blows once, and it was between 3 big bulls of that similar size to the one we were looking at there. And they were fighting around the house over a female that was very clearly an estrus. She was parading herself in front of them. And unfortunately, all 3 of them were at the same sort of size, so their dance-off didn't work because nobody was completely intimidated into giving up. And as a consequence, they started fighting, but they'd already chased off a young bull that had horns about half the size. And I watched this for ages because it's unusual to see them actually fighting. They usually try and display before they come to any physical contact and risk injuries. And whilst the 3 of them were fully involved in chasing and attacking each other, this young male snuck around the corner of the house, got hold of the female and snuck her away behind the other part of the house and mated with her, whilst the other 3 were distracted. So it goes to show that in the antelope world, just as in the human world, sometimes there's truth in the idea of brains before brawn. It's very entertaining to watch, and we were all cheering him on. Now, he had tiny little horns, which this male in particular I was talking about, but the one that we just saw was nice and big. And MJ, you were wondering about the way that hyena, I've got hyenas on the brain, that Nyala horns grow and how they get how the coloration works. Now, what you might have noticed about that particular male was he is starting to get what's known as the ivory tips on the end. It's not actually ivory, it's just the keratin taking on a paler color from the area of the horn. And the older the male gets, the bigger that ivory, in inverted commas, the whitish area at the top of the horn gets. So when you see young ones, you don't see that at all. And it only starts coming through when they're sort of 5 to 6 years old. And then that's mature. So from Texas, all the way from there, I hope that fully answers your question. We'll go back to the drainage line.
Yes, please.
Somehow Hyena Road is... So we've hit a very match. Let's head across to Scott for now, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And I've just seen a bird of prey sitting in the tree at about 2 o'clock. Have you got it there, Jean-Ray? Yeah. Not too sure what it is. I'm going to get my binoculars out and see if I can work out. Well, that looks like it could be a tawny eagle. And tawny eagles are renowned for helping us. Oh, lilac-breasted. Oh no, it was something else. It was another bird of prey that flew in there. What's that? Watch closely here. I don't know if it's a little goshawk or lizard buzzard or what that was, but it was a small predatory bird that flew in and bomb dived it once or twice. But let's go and take a closer look in there. Tawny eagles can help us to find kills. And there was a female leopard whose tracks were heading in this general direction, probably about half a mile away from here this morning. So there is a very vague chance that there could be some meat dangling in that tree and a leopard possibly dangling in the tree or sleeping below it. Happy to hear that Jamie was the one who managed to find you your first sighting of elephants this afternoon. I'm guessing you could well be spoiled with a few more. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of elephants about at the moment. Well, there the bird goes. Sorry about that. But there could still be a chance of some meat and a leopard nearby. Like I said, I think it was a tawny eagle, but hard to be certain. Lesser spotted eagles, which look quite similar, will also be returning at this time of the year. Come on. Not looking very promising. What we must just make sure of is that maybe the bird wasn't sitting in the same tree that the meat was in, but merely nearby. Or maybe it was just resting, as they do need to rest at some stage during the day. So that's why there's a strong chance this could be a false alarm. Nothing to see here for the time being. You'll be surprised how easy it is to overlook a kill in a tree. That's why I'm just going extra slowly. Very big milkberry tree growing out of this termite mound that we're approaching up on the left. That would be a perfect place to go and stash a kill if I was a leopard. Now, because the sun is shining onto this side of the termite mound, it's always in our best interest to check on the shady side, especially on a hot afternoon like this. Oh, it looks like we found the buffalo that we started the show with a bit earlier. They're just up ahead of us. Well, false alarm. Nothing to see here. Well, maybe I wasn't very clear in the sighting that we did have with those buffalo bulls a little bit earlier, because Grace in Texas would like to know if those were all males, and yes, they were indeed bachelors, buffalo bulls. And Grace in Texas is also wanting to know, where are all their ladies? And that's a good point. That's the second tree I've crashed into this week. This crash wasn't as bad as the last one. The last one I sent it was actually a perfect strike. The ladies, Grace, they move huge distances. Many mouths to feed, and often being pursued by prides of lion because they are easy members to take down of the buffalo family, the youngsters and the old females. So lions are very often on the heels or the hooves of these buffalo in the large herd, so they move very big distances. And we typically don't see huge numbers of them in the summer months. I know last summer we didn't see very many large feeding herds. Even in the winter we didn't see too many, and I guess because there are such large numbers of them, they need big open grass clearings, which you don't really get much of here. They entirely rely on grass for their food, and the old bulls who are kind of semi-retired can afford to semi-retire, and because there's not as much of them or as many of them, they can get enough food in these areas where the large herds cannot. But hopefully we'll see some sightings of them before too long. It's a very pretty bird that's just landed up on our right. And this bird actually played a large part in my first crash of the week into a marula tree. As it sits there and surfs that branch, you'll realize that it's quite a windy afternoon, thankfully, keeping us a bit cool. I guess if it wasn't windy, it would probably be 40 degrees Celsius plus. There's believed to be 8 different colors on this bird, so see if you can count 8 different colors. My favorite color on them is that electric turquoise blue, which is kind of best seen when they take off. A bright flash of turquoise from under their wings. Ideally now it would take off and we'd be able to give you a slow motion video of it in flight. It looks like it's quite comfortable there with its head into the wind. I guess if we're patient, we will get to see it fly. So let's give it a few moments. What may also happen is that it may see an insect on the ground below. Oh, that will work. It flew straight towards us. So that's going to be a good one. And hopefully the girls in the final control will be able to cut together a quick slow motion clip of it taking off, and you'll be able to see it shortly. Tennessee just sent through a special request asking if we could please see both a lizard buzzard as well as a jackal buzzard. The lizard buzzard we will definitely be able to see in the coming weeks and months. They're around. However, a jackal buzzard is not going to be possible unless we take you on safari elsewhere in Africa. They don't occur, sadly, in this area of South Africa, but more often inland and around the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands, so about halfway up the east coast and inland from there. They also stretch down, I think, into the Karoo and the central parts of South Africa, but I know for a fact they don't occur here. I remember lizard buzzard was one of the first birds of prey that I learned to identify back when I was 10 or 11 in a bird watching club at school, and it's got a very distinctive black marking down its throat that resembles a lizard's tail, I guess, if you create it. Should probably stop and do this, but I'm going to continue trying. Oh, other way. There we go. On the top left there we have the lizard buzzard, and you'll see this black throat stripe, which is a very easy way to help distinguish them from others. And apparently their call, which Sharon quite likes, rings out a distinctive cleo, clu, 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 clu. It's always quite funny watching how they spell out the spellings of these bird calls. I'm not sure exactly what a distinctive clicoo, clu, 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 although that kind of you could look out for. The Gabar goshawk, the bird below, has a piping tweet, 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 and other similar notes. I don't envy that person's job. Not an easy one to try and describe the calls of these birds. Okay, well, good news, the girls in the final control room have been hard at work, and they have already prepared the slow motion takeoff of the lilac-breasted roller. Enjoy it, it's about 10 seconds, and I will see you afterwards. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I'll look forward to taking a look at it later. It's a photographer's nemesis, that bird. Every photographer tries to get the ideal or perfect shot of them in flight, and it consumes many, many hours of one's time trying to get that right. I've yet to be happy with any of mine. Jandra, have you managed to get a good one yet? 50-50, so it's a kind of never-ending battle or quest for photographers to get the perfect lilac-breasted roller shot. It's going to have a go for some white-crested helmet shrikes that landed in the tree, but shortly after they landed they took off again, so we aborted that mission. Well, I've been a bit naughty. I haven't been checking carefully for tracks on this road, but it's quite an easy one to actually see them on. So I'm sure I would have noticed, even though I wasn't consciously focused on that task. So Jamie's found some Inyala for you at Buffelshoek Dam. So we're going to shift you across there and catch up a little bit later.
Welcome back, and we find ourselves sitting, having just been with that Nyala bull a little while ago, with probably the most Nyala I've ever seen together in one go, or at least definitely one of the larger herds I've seen. It's hard to see because they're in thick bush, but there's 14 of them here, between 14 to 15 of all ages, including one young male who is determined to cause trouble. He keeps chasing them all around. There he is. He's definitely causing trouble. He's just starting to get the ivory tips I was talking about on his horns. And then there's a load of babies from 1 or 2 months old. And then a couple of sub-adults. And they're all clustered around a knobthorn tree that I think the ellies have pushed over fairly recently. So they've got access to the nice green leaves at the top because it hasn't quite died. But they are so cute. A big bull walking at the back. So many of them. And I don't know what it is about this area, but it's certainly, I've never seen as many large herds of Inyala as I have at Djuma. I don't know why that is. It must be something to do with their habitat being suited to them. Usually when you do see them, you see them in sort of ones or twos around drainage lines. And yes, you might get the big herds clustered in a camp garden, but that's different because that's an artificial situation where they've come in for access to the watered plants, a little bit of extra sense of security. But moving around like this, I don't think I've seen herds like this. I'm hoping if we're patient, we're just sitting on the southern end of Buffelshoek Dam, and I was quite hoping that they would start edging towards the dam to have a drink. Look at that little boy with his short horns. Whoop! He's now running around because he's just before, while you were with Scott, he's been quite bullied by that young bull I was talking about. He's definitely throwing his weight around more than he should because he's still not all that impressive size-wise. I don't know who he thinks he is, but he's trying to prove something to them. Even more emerging from the back there. Everywhere I look, there's just wagging tails and flicking ears. Amazing. Very interesting to see. Actually, I came to Buffelshoek Dam to see if any of the elephants were going to come down here for a drink at this hot time of the day. Doesn't look as though they have, though. I think they're all hiding in that drainage line where we don't really have much in the way of signal, unfortunately. So I'm going to give it a chance to cool down a little bit, and then hopefully they're going to pop back out into the open. At the moment, though, I think they're all having naps in the shade. Not sure if you could hear that, but that was a thickney calling. A very confused thickney, because they're only meant to be out at night. They're nocturnal animals, or nocturnal birds. Okay. Well, Nyala don't seem to want to come out into the open, unfortunately. I was really hoping they were going to start moving in the opposite direction towards Buffelshoek Dam, but it seems as though they've all changed their mind and want to be in the thicker vegetation. So let's continue our exploration as to what's happening around Buffelshoek. I do have to reverse into a bit of a slightly dodgy signal corner, but I'm going to carry on that way, so it should be absolutely fine. Whoop! Sorry, tree. The tree is attached to part of Jigger that maybe wasn't ideal. That was quite the noise. Here we go, up and around and past Buffelshoek Dam. Not much happening at Buffelshoek this afternoon. I was hoping that there might be that cormorant that I saw, but there is, as usual, Bob the Bachelor. I think we should poke our nose down round the corner, because you never know who might be hiding in the shade. So let's do a quick exploration of Buffelshoek drainage line. The reason I'm popping down here is because it's the kind of area source, plenty of shade. Can you? I don't think we can venture too much further though without risking losing the audience to our signal problems, so doing a quick perusal of the area. Doesn't look like there's anything up here. So take one look at Bob the Bachelor whilst we are here, and then carry on. He is right into the sun though, so I'm going to pull up alongside him. Checking all of the shade spots really, really carefully, because you just never know who might be hiding there. Oh. Alright, Bob, sorry. Are you having a bad day? I think that Bob is quite happy as a loner. He just gave me quite an interesting little display of mistrust when I went closer. He opened his mouth, swung around quickly. I think Bob's having a bad day. There go the two Egyptian geese behind him. Alright, Bob, we'll leave you in peace. He just gave me quite a sideways look as if to say, what do you think you're doing? Just while we are here looking at Bob the Bachelor, Yesterday was Angie's birthday, and we did wish her a big happy birthday, and she says thank you to everybody who sent her birthday wishes, including many of the viewers. And we must say a big thank you to Angie as well for introducing, Nurse Angie, for introducing the children. Oh, here we go. Nicely done, Bob. That was very impressive. Now that is not just a yawn, that can often be quite a display from a hippo. It's him saying, look how big my ivory tusks are. Don't think about coming any closer or into my dam. And I think he's put that message across quite clearly. And yes, sorry, Nurse Angie will say, oh, roll over. Obviously his back was getting a little bit hot. Well, it's the first time I've ever seen Bob do that. Right, Bob, are you going to let me finish my sentence, or are you going to do something else quirky? Nope, you're going to do something else quirky. Rolling over again. Feet in the air. What you doing, Bob? Are you having fun? I wish I could join you, but somehow I think that would be a terrible idea. And again. How cool is this? And every time he does it, he looks at us again. What's up, Bob? Ooh, mouth open this time. Bob is actually sending us a message. He's letting us know that he's scary and fit and big and intimidating, and that we mustn't push him in terms of personal space. He's not just displaying for the fun of it, it's displacement behavior. I think, although it looked like he was yawning, he did have his mouth open when he rolled. That was very interesting. He wasn't yawning, he was just opening his mouth to let us know how big his tusks are. And I promise you, Bob, it's duly recognized. I acknowledge you are probably, definitely, far more intimidating than I am. Well, that was interesting. Maybe Bob's decided, because he's become such a feature of Buffelshoek Dam on our wild safaris, that maybe he better up his game a little bit to keep people entertained. Right, now that Bob seems to have settled down, I'm going to try and finish my sentence, which was to say, we also say a big thank you to Nurse Angie for introducing the kids to our wild safaris. We'll just have another look at Bob the Bachelor. Now, if I'm totally honest, there is a reason I believe that Bob is the way he is and alone in this dam. And I think he's been in some serious conflict recently. He's got some dents and some scratches on his back that suggests he has been fighting with other males. And a couple of the viewers have picked up on the fact that he's got red on his rump. And Jerry, you were wondering what it is, and I think it's an injury. I'm going to grab my binoculars. Maybe he'll do another roll for us, presenting both his rump and his belly at some point. But I don't think he's going to. I think he's done displaying for us. But he definitely does show signs of healing injuries. And I think that is why he's taken refuge in Buffelshoek Dam. And maybe with all of his nicks and cuts on his back, maybe he's rolling, just as Kevin says, to have a bit of a belly rub. I'm not sure I'm going to test out that theory though. I might give it a miss. You never know though, you might just be completely misunderstood, poor Bob. Alrighty. Well, I think it's time for us to leave Bob be. Although that's certainly the most interesting he's been since we've been watching what he's up to in his dam. Maybe he's just feeling lighthearted and like he needs to cool down, having a bit of a roll in the water. As we can see, the water's not that deep anymore. He can't actually stand. So there's a little bit of the top sticking out. Now, he has to stand in the center of the dam. He can't actually swim. So hippos, although they do have a level of buoyancy, they can't swim. They have to, when they move, walk along the bottom. So Judith, you were wondering if he was standing or if he's been floating, and he is standing on the bottom. They're one of the few mammals, bizarrely, that actually can't swim. They can sink to the bottom and they can hold their breath for 5 or 6 minutes on average, sometimes right up until 11 minutes. I timed one hippo that went under for 11 minutes. So it can extend further than that. And what they do is they sink to the bottom and they run along the bottom. And they're quite important for keeping water flow, especially within a stagnant dam like this, and stirring up the contents at the bottom. So they're ecologically quite important, as well as in rivers, where they stop sediment from building up in the corners by moving through in the way that they do. Very unusual hippos in that it's such a strange thing to think they're so perfectly adapted and so completely dependent on being in the water, and yet they're one of the few mammals who cannot swim out here. Really interesting stuff. And it's bulls like Bob who can be quite defensive. You hear those stories of hippos occasionally being very, very defensive of their dams and the animals that come to visit. And I did see Bob the other day looking like he wanted to attempt to chase an elephant away. And I wonder, he gave us a little bit of a show there. It's the same show I saw him giving to an elephant, with that big yawn and then rushing towards the bank. And Susan, in Tennessee, you were wondering if he would ever attack a vehicle from the water. The answer is almost certainly not. But I say that almost, especially because he is an injured hippo. He is an older bull, which makes him a little bit more unpredictable. Most of the time, 99.9% of the time, a hippo's safety point is water. And usually it's quite, depending on the situation, it's usually quite safe to walk right up to the bank to have a look at a pod or a raft of hippos. And they might display and sort of run towards you, but they're not actually generally going to come out of the water to make good on those promises. Oh, another big yawn. That is aimed at us. See how he constantly turns his head. So whilst I think in absolutely all likelihood he wouldn't come running out to attack the vehicle, I still made sure in my approach that first of all I didn't go too close, and second of all I had an escape route planned just in case, just on that very slim off chance that he did come towards us. And in the vehicle we'd probably be very safe. On foot, a hippo is a different matter, and you don't want to be in between a hippo and his point of safety, which is a dam. Then you find yourself in incredible danger. Now, I'm sure many of you will have heard that hippos are responsible for the most deaths in Africa, than any other animal, apart from, of course, the mosquito, which carries malaria. And that whilst it is true that they are aggressive, it's usually because, if you think about it, where do people make settlements? They build alongside rivers, and their chances of them encountering hippos is so likely. And even though the deaths due to crocodiles might be higher, a lot of the time those bodies disappear. But for hippos, especially in the late afternoon or the early morning when people are moving down to the river to get water, that's when they're out and about. And most of the time, they're just trying to get back to their point of safety. They feel threatened because they can't get to water where they know that they are safe. And as a consequence, they attack people. And the oxpeckers are back onto Bob again. And no, I don't think that Bob is going to come rushing out of the vehicle. I think he was just giving us a show. But I never discount anything, because you just don't know what's happened in the lives of the animals before you've come to see them. That's why it's always important to have that degree of caution. And chances are, if he did rush at us, he'd stop at the bank. Look at all of those oxpeckers. Oh, bye then. But look at all of those oxpeckers that were there. Okay, well, Bob has been highly entertaining whilst we watch our oxpeckers disappear off into the distance. I think they came down to use Bob as a resting place. I believe Scott has some warthogs to show you, so let's head across to him from one tusked creature to another, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And we usually don't get to see warthogs in such a relaxed mood or get you very close to them, so this is a great opportunity to take a close look at them. They're interesting animals. This is a female, yet she has a moustache, and I think she's going to pop out back into a little clearing shortly, so let's just be patient and we'll get to see her again. Both the males and females will have tusks, but the males are certainly bigger. There's a tree right in front of me, so I can't really move the vehicle, and I think it'll be best, because we are close to it, just to be a little bit patient. I'm sure she's going to pop out. Oh no, maybe not as soon as I would like. Well, here she comes. As she makes her way into the clearing, take a close look at her belly. It's looking quite rounded, and I'm sure there's some piglets in there, possibly 3 or 4 is usually how many they give birth to. And they are one of the cutest of animals that we are going to see born this summer. No, this isn't working. Let me try and creep forward a little bit. Got a little bit of space before we hit this tree. Right. Looks like she's been having a mud wallow recently. Just like the buffaloes we saw earlier, the warthog love to wallow in mud. Also, watch closely while she's feeding. There's 2 sets of tusks, one on the top jaw and one on the bottom jaw, and it's the ones on the bottom jaw that are actually the dangerous ones. They occlude and sharpen against the upper tusks every time she closes her mouth, and they're like razor blades. There, we've got a good view of them. And I've seen 1 or 2 leopards sliced up, also lion, from those little sharp tusks. Well, Wolfgang in Sweden asks an interesting question. He'd like to know which is the worst season for them. Well, I guess it depends on what exactly you mean by worst. Worst in terms of the toughest time to find food, it would certainly be the winter. That's for all herbivores. But I think it'll be a much safer time of year for them because they're so short and low to the ground. In the summer months, when there's lots of long grass and thick undergrowth, it's difficult for them to see very far around them. And because they're quite noisy feeders, predators can hear them gobbling away and creep up on them. And that's why we don't have, oh, toilet break. That's why we don't get too many warthog in the Sabi Sands. There's not enough short grassy open clearings, which is their favorite habitat, because it's harder for anything to catch them there. Oh, was that a little sneeze? She is in attendance with one of her offspring from a previous litter, probably last year's litter. I don't know where it's disappeared to though. It was around here somewhere earlier. And maybe that's who she's looking for now. And you often will see, when we see the piglets come out this year, there'll be kind of small, medium and large. The mother, previous litter, depending on how many were successfully raised, and all the new additions. Very good. Well, that was one of the better warthog sightings I think I've managed to share with you. I think in this heat they weren't interested in running off as they usually do. This is the tree that was preventing us from moving forward. There's a very pretty bird here. I actually saw one earlier, but it flew off sadly. I haven't showed you very many of these, and I hope it turns and faces us, because it's got, look at those markings on its face. And wait until you see its full chest, if we're lucky enough to. It's covered in little black dots. You can see a few of them just below its right wing there. They are such cool birds. Nikki says it's a Dalmatian bird. That's not a bad way to describe it, I guess. Haven't thought of it like that though personally, and that's the great thing about these live safaris. We get so many people's opinions and perspectives as to what is going on out here. It's a type of thrush. Come on, turn around. We can see you. Doesn't matter if you stand still, we can still see you. And this is typically where you find them, and their name, the ground scraper thrush, helps explain where they spend a lot of their time. You can see a bit more of its chest. Look at how awesome that bird is. Possibly a new one for the bird list. Interestingly enough, they're not migratory, but we don't see them very often. I think only on one or two occasions have I managed to capture them on camera with you. We can hear the fluid calls of a black-headed oriole around us. We saw quite a few of them this morning. Come on, one more shuffle for us, one more ground scraping. Oh, there you go, that's a bit better. Looks like I found something to gobble on there. They feed mainly on little insects, which it finds as it lifts up leaves and wanders through the undergrowth, as well as earthworms. I really really just wanted to turn around and run towards us though, so we get a full chest shot, but I'm not sure if we're going to get that lucky. Let's be patient though. I think just like the warthog though, it's not too interested in moving in this hot afternoon. Getting a little bit more chest shots now. And feel free, any of you who are working on your bird list, to let us know how you're progressing. If there are any specific birds you are seeking out that we can try and track down for you guys. And if you haven't started your bird list, best you jump on the bus before you get left behind. Now is the time to do it. We can expect our bird population to double in the coming months, from about 200 birds to about 400 birds. That will all migrate from various parts of Africa and Eurasia. There's still lots of them on the way. We've only got a few that have just arrived so far. Love the way they lower their head as they stalk through the undergrowth. Oh, there's a good frontal shot, but it's behind a bush. You still get a good idea though, I guess. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ground Scraper Thrush. There's also a few of its cousins, the Hurricane Thrush, running around that I also haven't shown you for quite some time, so maybe we'll be able to tick off another thrush this afternoon. Quite a few of these small saplings sprouting out that I noticed were the first to germinate, and they've been one of the most prolific first germinators. So I'm just going to give you a quick look at some of them so we can keep monitoring their growth. Jump out quickly. I think they're knobthorn trees, knobthorn acacias, but can't be certain yet because they're still very small. But they are growing everywhere. And if we look in this little section here, you'll see hundreds of these tiny little saplings popping up, and they certainly do. If we look at this one over here, just want to try and be as delicate as possible. These ears are quite distinctively Mickey Mouse shaped. Oh, is that kind of working there, Jean-Andre?
Yeah.
So you can see quite a Mickey Mouse shape appearance, and these are characteristic of knobthorn trees. So what we'll do is try and find you an adult knobthorn tree and show you those leaves and compare them to these. So I'm guessing that's what they are, but a lot of them will probably be eaten before they get a chance to grow up. But they are literally everywhere. I think one of the most successful in terms of seed dispersal and early germination after our first rains. Now, where is a big knobthorn tree so that we can show you an adult? Lisa on Twitter has just asked me if that was a male thrush that we've just seen, and I don't think so, Lisa. Well, it's not that I don't think so. It's difficult to distinguish. They both look identical. So if I bring out the bush here, the book, the ground scraper thrush, which we have just seen now, looks identical to the female. And so does the hurricane thrush, the other one that I'm hoping to show you a little bit later on if we get lucky. So both thrushes have equal appearances regardless of their gender. I guess the majority of the birds actually are quite different, the males often being bolder and more brightly colored than the females, or better colored. But quite a few are similar looking, and interestingly, with birds it's often the female that's the larger. Which kind of makes sense if you think to when it's time for mating, they'd be a bit top heavy if the man was bigger, which would make for some interesting times. Where's a knobthorn acacia when you need one? They're usually everywhere, but not in this area. This is mainly silver clusterleaf and combretum woodland that we're driving through now. Now I'm trying to get some more birds for your bird list, since Stephanie in Switzerland asked me what 3 birds am I still missing that I would like to see. Well, the African shoebill is one. You don't get them in South Africa, but you do get them further north in Central Africa. They are prehistoric looking animals. Sadly my book doesn't have one in, but worth checking out, the African shoebill. So that's high up on the list. Another one is an Angola pitta, which I think you do get in some parts of the Kruger, but they're very rare. Oh, there's a little steenbok. Let's see if it doesn't run away while I try and find out if there's an Angolan pitta in the book. No, I don't think you get the pitta here. The book that I have is specifically for birds of the Kruger National Park. Oh, I haven't been watching the steenbok, but it seems to be drifting off into the undergrowth. It's a fully grown male. So the Angola pitta I sadly can't show you, as well as the African shoebill. What would be the 3rd bird to add to my list? Possibly the yellow form of a crimson-breasted shrike. Now that I can show you. I've never seen the yellow form of a crimson-breasted shrike. Shrike. Surely that's going to be... There we go. Thanks, Chandra. Now I have seen the crimson-breasted shrikes. They only occur in a very small pockets of the very northern Kruger National Park, called the called the Porphyry Triangle, where I was lucky enough to spend some time in an area with incredible birding and also beautiful pristine wilderness. But this is the yellow form here, which I've yet to see. So those would be 3 birds that come to mind, but the African shoebill is high up on the list. To be honest though, Sharon, I wouldn't call myself a twitcher. That is the word used for very passionate ornithologists. And I'm happy just to tick off the odd bird here and there, but I've got friends in the industry who, wherever they go, they're looking to add new birds to their lists. I'm not quite that pedantic. I prefer the smaller creepy crawlies to the birds. I guess. So, now that it's cooled down ever so slightly, let's hope that the female leopard tracks we had in this general area this morning are going to lead us to the leopard itself. The interesting thing with leopards, even in the heat of the day in summer, they even move quite often. So you very seldom, unless a leopard's got a kill, will find a leopard in the same place in the afternoon where you left it in the morning, which is almost always the case with lion. But leopards will still move on the most blistering of summer days. Maybe not necessarily very far, but even if they move 100 meters, it can make for a tricky business to find them again. So I guess it just counteracts everything I've just told you, that they're going to wait for it to cool down. But they're more likely to move larger distances, obviously, when it's cooler. But something to bear in mind, lions will often not move a muscle in this part of South Africa during the summer months, during the day, whereas leopard and cheetah will. Wild dog also tend to kind of stay bedded down wherever you leave them in the morning. You'll typically find them there in the afternoon. And that's one animal we're hoping shows a surprise visit sooner rather than later. It's been months since we saw them. Okay, well, it's about time you guys headed across to Jamie for an update to see what she's been up to, and I'm sure it won't be long before we give you an update as well a little bit later.
Welcome back, and we've left Buffelshoek Dam for now just because it is so quiet around there and everything's looking for bits of shade. So I've returned to one of the big drainage lines that runs along Inyala Road South to see what's happening here before I return to start looking for the ellies as it gets a little bit cooler, and then of course to follow on with my plan to head to the hyena den and see what's happening there with that baby hippo drama that happened last night on the Djuma Dam camera. Now that's definitely the most entertaining I've ever seen Bob being. It's the most I've seen him yawn and roll. Really, really interesting to see. Now, he was a little bit on edge. He gave us that yawn. I mentioned that I felt like it was part of a display of him saying, don't come any closer. And he's also on his own, and he is injured. He's got a couple of injuries. Now, Monique, who's watching all the way from London, you were wondering if it's usual for hippos to be on their own like that, and if he's been chasing other hippos. In the past, we have seen Bob the Bachelor in that dam with another hippo that looks to be a female, who has been nicknamed Princess Daisy. I haven't seen her for a couple of days, but I have noticed that his tracks generally run all the way from Sydney's Dam, which is the far corner in Buffelshoek, all the way along Buffelshoek Cut Line and then back to Buffelshoek Dam. Now, I'm not too sure exactly what's going on here, but I would say he is a mature bull. There's a bit of competition for space at the moment because it's hot, it's dry. The dams are slowly starting to shrink, and the hippos are starting to feel a little bit under pressure. Now, typically rafts or pods are dominated by one mature male, one dominant bull, and he'll be happy to tolerate younger bulls as long as they're behaving subserviently, so they're not going out and marking territory or anything like that. What could have happened is that Bob might have been displaced from his pod or his raft by an incoming rival, and that he's still competing a little bit for it. That's why he keeps returning across to Sydney's dam. It's a theory, but it's not unusual to see males off on their own like that, especially once they reach a sexually mature age and they want to start competing for access to females, or if they are older males who've been displaced by younger bulls. In this case, because of his size and the shape of his head, I think he is quite a mature bull. But very interesting to see what he was up to. And I think he was also rolling around as well just to cool off, but I think it was partly a display to let us know that he doesn't want us any closer. And I mentioned that I doubted, or highly doubted, that he was going to come and charge the vehicle, and he generally leaves other animals alone that come and drink. I've seen waterbuck drinking there, but I did see him behave quite aggressively and put on quite a show when an elephant came down to drink, before thinking twice about it and retreating back to his normal space. Stop for a second because it's a nice view of a go-away bird. Oh, disappeared. But it was nice because you don't often get to see them out in the open like that. Sitting in the leaves of a bush willow, hiding away. Okay. Let's continue on. I can hear green wood hoopoes, which I've been on a mission for the last few days to try and film. I haven't yet managed. Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to try and see if I can spot some of these. Oh, I can see them disappearing. They're so quick and they just fly away at the wrong moments. I've tried 3 or 4 times now. Now there's a lot of fresh elephant tracks here as well. And it makes me wonder whether or not some of that herd might have come down into the drainage line here to seek refuge from the heat. Definitely seems like a good idea. But it has been interesting, now that I'm just thinking about this scenario with Bob and really giving it some consideration as to what might be happening in his life, because it has made him a little bit grumpy, and we did see a bit of injury, or a couple of injuries on his back as well. And it's made him look distinctly uncomfortable, and I wonder what it is that's going on. I think he's an older bull, but it's interesting that we've seen him a few times with a female, in the company of a female, who's obviously also decided that maybe she likes the solitude of Dam a little bit. But if we keep having days like this that are as hot as it is now, Andrew's just giving us a bit of a clean, get rid of some of the dust and spider webs that collect. Hopefully there'll be some rain soon, because days like today that are baking hot, and it's been a long time since we've had a proper rain. We've only really had one. He's going to need to have a bit of time to find another dam to go to. I continue my mission along the drainage line to see if we can find some elephants or some hyenas a little bit later once it starts to get cooler. Let's go and see what Scott is up to, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Well, 20 out of 10 to Gendre for spotting this triagama. How on earth he did it, I'm not too sure. This looks like a female to me, as she lacks the bright blue head that the male will have. I'm just going to have a look in my book quickly to see if I can find you a picture of a male. And who knows, maybe there'll be a male in the tree nearby. And it must be loving this hot weather. It says in the book that they feed mainly on flying insects, so they're obviously very agile. I've never actually seen them hunting. And that lizard's probably around 25 centimeters long, just to give you an idea of how big it is. Maybe it's actually had too much sun today, and that's why it's relaxing in the shade. Thankfully, it chose to reside in a knobthorn acacia, so this is the adults of that small sapling that we saw a little bit earlier, and you would have been able to see the Mickey Mouse shaped leaves on the tree. Now, as Gendre zooms out, you get a good understanding as to why he gets a 20 out of 10 for spotting that. I mean, 50 points actually. Interestingly enough, we did see one this morning, but it kept hiding on the other side of the tree, and it was when we weren't live. I jumped out and tried to usher it around onto Gendre's side of the tree, but that moment was short-lived. And ever since then, Gendre has been completely focused on trying to find agamas, and he says he keeps seeing random branches and sticks that he thinks are one of them, but he has got it right and managed to succeed. Great. Now, even though they live in trees, they interestingly enough lay their eggs in the ground. Oh, what I forgot was to actually show you the picture of the male, so let me do that quickly. Not the best picture. On the bottom right there, Gendre, well, there's the female on the top. She's got a bigger picture, that's who we looked at earlier, but then the male has got that bright blue head, beautiful coloration, and they often bob their heads up and down when giving their mating display. So that's something that we can look forward to seeing in the coming months. Very good. Well spotted, Gendre. What I think I might do now is just head east into Arethusa. We are quite close to our eastern boundary, and try and see if we can get any updates on the radio as to what's going on across there. Maybe the Anderson male would have returned for a visit. That'll be great. Or failing that, Tingana, whose territory stretches from Djuma across into Arethusa and basically occupies these two entire properties. And Anderson and Tingana, for those of you who don't know, are two big male leopards rather, and they are rivals. Anderson occurs further to our south and west, but Tingana is the most dominant male of the area that we can now traverse. A few months ago, when I started here, it was Mvula, but he's been pushed by Tingana to the east, so we don't see too much of him anymore, but he's still doing well. He gets seen quite regularly to the lodges in the east of us, or in the lodges to the east of us, rather. I'm going to be crossing into Arethusa. So I'm just letting the guys know on the Djuma Game Drive channel that I'm going to head across to Arethusa, and I've just switched over to a different channel. And the reason why they have lots of different channels is that the radio chatter usually gets quite chaotic and it gets split up between different areas. David in New Jersey has worked out that there are a lot of easy meals slurping around the remaining waterholes, and those being the catfish. There's a lot at the Djuma waterhole, and they're an incredibly easy meal. Sadly, they're too big for a lot of the avian predators to feed on them, the fish eagles, marabou storks, saddle-billed storks, but they are the perfect size for a leopard to feed on. It would be a perfect snack for a leopard, and leopard do in fact feed on them. There was a photographic sequence taken recently, I'm not sure where it was taken, of a leopard jumping into this thick black mud, and one photo the whole leopard's face is black and all you can see is his bright yellow eyes with a muddy catfish dangling out one side. So leopards will certainly feed on them, but it's mainly young or desperate leopards that would do that. It's something that I've never seen before, and I'm hoping we either get to see it live with you guys, or a leopard pops down and does that at the Djuma waterhole where there's a 24-hour live camera, and that can hopefully capture the moments. Lions in this area don't like getting their feet wet, and I have never seen footage of them feeding on catfish before. That's not to say that a young male that's been kicked out of his pride and is learning to fend for himself hasn't done that. I'm sure it has happened. I just haven't seen any photos or footage of it happening. So good point. It is something we could see, Dave. Sadly, due to bad radio comms here in Arethusa, as well as it sounds like Jamie's radio is battling in this heat, so I'm not going to be able to go too deep into Arethusa. So we'll cancel that plan and head back to Djuma. I'm just going to continue up this eastern corridor of Arethusa. We should still have decent comms with final control, but it is a little bit shaky. We might have some great silhouette shots of a red-billed woodhoopoo clinging onto the side of this tree, looking for insects. Come back this side. Extremely pretty birds when the sunlight is in your favor, but in this scenario we're only going to get to see the silhouette, which still provides us with a great idea of the shape of this bird. Very long tail and a big long recurved beak. Oh, there's another one. There you get a better view of the beak. Also panting like the red-billed oxpeckers we saw earlier. It's still hot out here. They are very frantically jumping along this marula tree, feeding on little insects that are living in the cracks in the bark. That's why they've got that long thin beak that they can probe into little cracks and crevices. Bless you, Jeandre. Amy in British Columbia has obviously been tuned into quite a few of these live safaris and is not quite happy with the amount of jackal we're seeing, and would like to know why we don't see more. Do they live in clans or packs like hyenas and wild dogs? And why don't we see that many of them? There simply aren't too many of them here. I guess the high predator density, leopard and lion, keep their populations down, and it's simply the wrong habitat and environment for them. There are a couple that we do see from time to time, mainly the side striped jackal, which interestingly enough is less common throughout South Africa than the black-backed jackal. But that's what we see more of here in the Sabi Sands. VM and I did see one briefly the other day though, but we had streaming issues, so sadly you missed that one. But they are around from time to time, but it's just simply not a good area to see jackal in. It's an important thing to remember when planning a safari out to South Africa, or Africa as a whole, because different areas will have different populations of the same species that occur throughout Africa. So depending on what you want to see, you must pick your destination wisely. The leopard is a destination which is famous for the big five: lion, elephant, rhino, buffalo, and the main one that the Sabi Sands is most famous for is good leopard sightings. The leopard here are plentiful and very relaxed with the vehicles. You get many reserves where leopards are plentiful, but they haven't been habituated over many, many years of gentle persuasion to trust us as humans and let us gain insight into their lives without interfering or helping them in any way. So that would be one of the advantages of coming on safari to the Sabi Sands. Almost guaranteed leopard sightings in your 3 or 4 night stay. But jackal, on the other hand, not so much. One thing I forgot to mention is that they live in pairs. So they are monogamous. They'll have a partner that they stick to year round, and they usually hang around in set areas. They like open areas in the Sabi Sands, I've noticed. And again, we don't have many open areas here, so that's probably a contributing factor. This is going to be a good close-up view of a yellow-billed hornbill. Please hold your wings out and do your proper call. Come on. Let's keep watching for a second or two. I think they are building up to the crescendo, where it will hold its wing up high above its head. Come on. No luck. But thankfully, Jamie's got another bird waiting for you. Not quite as pretty and comical looking as this one, and you'll see what I mean when you jump across in a few seconds.
Well, welcome back, and I was just taking a shortcut up past FC to see if we can start heading towards the hyena den when we noticed this marabou stork. Now apparently it seems as though, I think I heard a rumour that he ate a terrapin on the Djuma Dam camera, this particular marabou. And with beaks like that, they are pretty fearsome hunters. And they're very big, very solid birds. I'm actually quite surprised that thin dead branch is supporting him. And those are the kind of dead tree structures that these birds like marabou storks and vultures love to sit on, because it stops them, and fish eagles actually, because it stops them from getting caught in the foliage when they take off. And I think let's just shift a little bit closer so we can have one last look at him, and then I'm going to loop around and up onto quarantine and see what we can see there. I spot some monkeys. Hello monkeys. Let's go have a look at the monkeys. I've heard this troop here many times calling around the lodge. Let's see if they're going to let us get close to them. They're playing peekaboo in the tree. Stop here for the moment and see if they're going to pop their heads out. They're hiding from us. There's one. Jumping all around. And I bet these guys love it here, right next to the lodge, to take the opportunity to wait until everybody's out on game drive and then do a little bit of exploration to see what the guests might have left behind. Such as any scraps they might be able to grab from plates. guys on this tree are particularly shy, but we are being observed by another individual who's made good on his trip into the or opportunity to explore the camp. He's sitting right underneath the electric fence, doing a little bit of exploring in that direction. At the moment, he's stayed away from the lodge. Just appeared to be digging in the ground. Hello, what you up to? Looks like a girl to me. Looking back over her shoulder a little bit guiltily, like maybe this isn't the place for her to be. And the mad squirrel that's always calling around this lodge. Oh, venturing into the lodge. Naughty monkey. Very cautious approach. And off our monkey disappears to cause mischief somewhere in the lodge, taking refuge in a tree. I wonder what that one's going to get up to whilst outside of the, well, during game drive hours when the lodge is quiet. A couple of them who are in the tree are now tucked away right at the top, hiding away from us like we haven't spotted them. Do a loop around, see if there's any view. Might be. Oh, I didn't see you there. No. Quick scratch behind the ear. Oh, itchy. There you can see those bright little intelligent eyes of theirs. Full of mischief. When I was a very, very young child, I was actually quite scared of monkeys. I'm obviously not anymore, but those were a fear of mine, born of a couple of experiences of being robbed of snacks whilst on holiday. Peeking out from the green leaves. Yeah, monkey. Here we go, we can see him beautifully now. Perfect spot and really beautiful light. Oh, but you are cute. Not sure what he's munching on at the moment. He's sitting on a marula tree that's tucked against a knob thorn. So he's got the best of both worlds there. Protection of the thorns and then a nice comfortable seat to stretch out on. And there's that incredibly dexterous tail at work. I wonder what he managed to eat there. Got something. What you munching? Oh. A nibble and then a quick scratch. Might have caught something like an insect under the bark. I don't see any berries or anything. Neither of these trees are going to have berries at the moment. Oh, doesn't that look comfortable? Found the perfect position. scratch, 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 scratch. These guys will also have various fleas and ticks that cause those scratches, and as I'm sure many of you know, primates in particular demonstrate that very important allo grooming. So grooming each other as part of a social hierarchy and bonding experience. Oh, where are you off to, little one? Gonna find something new. To no good. Watching us out of the corner of your eye. That was a nice little treat. Oh, we've got another one hiding there.
It's the same one.
It's the same one. Oh, cool. Well done. Well done, Andrew. I can't see this little guy at all from where I'm sitting. Oh, it's coming. There we go. Now I can. Disappearing, ducking through the branches. I wish I could climb trees like that. I think it must be terribly good fun. I know that James Hendry comes fairly close. Or at least puts in quite a bit of effort. See how beautifully green the tree is. Wow. Oh, naughty monkeys. Oh, you found another one. Tucked away in the leaves. I'm very curious as to what it is they're eating up here. I'm wondering if they're not finding insects under the bark. That's all I could think it might be. Did you see that one, Andrew? Oh, that's all right. Oh, no, never mind. Ducked away. Interestingly, unlike any other animal, these guys knew exactly when I was pointing, which one I was pointing at. All I did was raise my finger and he shot off like a guilty person. They're all playing peekaboo with us through the leaves. Oh. Okie dokie. Well, that was a nice little interlude with the naughty monkeys surrounding the lodge and hopping through the and I hope you guys took lots of screenshots of those monkeys. That was beautiful light. Not often that we get them comfortable enough that we can sit under a tree with them and just watch them doing their natural things whilst they look cheekily back at us. And I think it's time for us to carry on. It's reached that cooling down stage. I'm hoping that the hyenas might be a little bit more active now as it gets darker. Still feeling very, very warm. I was almost expecting a storm to blow in tonight. There was just something in the wind, but it hasn't happened. I think that might have been wishful thinking, or it's on its way, but it's coming a little bit later. Because looking backwards now, I think I can see some clouds building. I think we should go and have a look on quarantine. Let's head to the clearing and see what the skyline looks from there. Because it would definitely be nice to have some relief from the heat. I think I might have been right. I think it is building on the horizon, slowly but surely. Hopefully, it's not like the last few storms that we had, or the last two storms that we had, which were all noise and no rain. Let me zip up to quarantine quickly and let's have a look at what's coming. While I am driving, we were talking a lot about Bob the hippo and the fact that he's a little bit intolerant about other animals being around his dam, including Jigger the Land Rover. And Yummy Sphinx, you were wondering if we get any crocodiles in this area. or if they've been chased away by the hippos. Sorry, lady. Alright. And the answer is that we haven't seen that. I haven't seen that many here, but that doesn't mean to say that they're not around. They can cover immense distances, despite what you might expect in terms of them needing to be around water. So one day a crocodile might just rock up to the dam. At the moment, Djuma Dam is a little bit too empty, as you can tell. But for the most part, in terms of crocodile interactions with hippos, they're fairly tolerant of each other. It's only when they start to get a little bit pushed for space that they really start to get a little bit pressured and miserable. And then sometimes the hippo might take its frustrations out on the crocodile. But for the most part, that doesn't really happen so much. The hippo will always win that particular battle. Here we go. Getting to the sunset. Let me go scoot around here. Let's have a look at the storm that I think is rolling in. There you go. Beautiful blood red sun at the end of the day. Oh, that's a beautiful view. And I think, just looking at the clouds that are slowly making their way around the sun, I think I might have been right about the storm that's coming. It's still a long way off, but it might just hit. Not going to happen before the end of the sunset safari. It'll probably be about 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. But I'm really hoping it might bring some rain to fill up the dams. Alright, there's the last few rays dip down in that beautiful African skyline. I'm going to start heading across to the hyena den. It gets dark very quickly from here on. So let's go see if those hyenas are out and about. And of course, whether or not we have any answer to that mystery involving that baby hippo that was attacked at the Djuma Dam. I'm keeping my fingers crossed though that that baby might have escaped. Still think it's possible. Let's head across there and investigate the last avenue that's open to us and see if any of those adorable little cubs are out and about. Nice to have a little bit of relief from the afternoon's heat. It's still warm, but there's a bit of a hint of coolness in the breeze around us. Looking at the wispy shaped clouds, I think that it might just be a cold front on its way. Look at how beautiful that is as we're driving along. A lot of those are very high up. Cirrus clouds right at the top. And that usually preempts a cold front coming through. On we go onto Aubrey's Road, going towards Aubrey's Road on Boyatilla main access. See if we can find anything else to show you. And I think while we do head across to the hyena den, let's see what Scott is up to, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. Happy to hear that you are enjoying a beautiful sunset with Jamie. The quarantine clearings certainly do make for one of the better vistas to enjoy a sunset from. We have raced from our western boundary to our northeastern boundary in the hope that Kurula, a female leopard, may show herself to us. So that's our plans. Maybe just show you the last of the glowing sun. It's about to just dip below the Drakensberg. Goodbye. See you tomorrow at about 10 to 6. What a wonderful evening it is. I can't express how much of a relief the temperature is now that the sun has disappeared. It was unpleasant at the start of drive, or at least for me it was. But now it's cooled down into a beautiful, beautiful evening. Now Raisa, who's one of our leopard experts, has just asked a little bit of insights into what we think about who is the father and how that will play an effect on her cubs if she does indeed have some here by the Buffelshoek Dam. And it's a good question, because basically this area, we don't regularly see a dominant male here. Tingana, who's dominant over the majority of Djuma, we don't see here, or we haven't. It's not to say he hasn't come here, but we don't see him this far. Mvula could still come here, very possibly, but we also haven't seen him for months now. It used to be his local hangout. And there's a new, quite skittish male who's come south from the northern reaches of Buffelshoek into Djuma. Well, into at least the majority of Buffelshoek, and we don't see him much because he's a skittish male leopard. He probably grew up in the Kruger or the Manyaleti, where he was not exposed to vehicles, and he therefore acts like a normal leopard would do and doesn't allow vehicles to see much of him. And this is the male that Karula was seen mating with. She wasn't seen mating with Tingana or Mvula, but it's not to say that she didn't mate with all three of those leopards to give them the false sense of fatherhood. Only one of them will in fact be the father. So I'm not too sure, but it is a good question. Maybe that is going to lead to problems for those cubs, because male leopards who did not father cubs will kill them. And if she didn't in fact mate with Mvula or Tingana, she'll either be forced to spend a lot of time in Buffelshoek, Hook, which would be very close to here, or she would be if that's her den around Buffelshoek Hook Dam. So it may mean we're not going to see a lot of her if she's a clever mother. This is all hypothetically speaking, if she only did mate with that one male. And that is the only confirmed sighting that was had. So, good point, Raisa. It's going to be interesting to see what plays out, but only time will tell. We first need to establish for certain whether she does in fact have cubs. I guess that's going to be the first step of the puzzle, because at the moment it's all just speculation. I can't even remember exactly when it was that she was seen mating, but it seems like it could be 3 months back, which is the rough gestation period of a female leopard, about 100 to 110 days. So I think it does add up in my mind, but even that date I'm not certain of. So my plan is just to drive as many roads in the general area of where she was last seen yesterday, in the hope that she will pop out again. This is currently our eastern boundary called Cheetah Cut Line. The left is the no-go zone, the right is Juma. Now we touched on a little bit earlier the likelihood of lion or leopard eating catfish, and the final conclusion on that matter was that leopard are known to and are more likely to feed on catfish and drying up little pools of mud than lion are. But Deborah in Ontario has just asked whether there's a likelihood that a spotted hyena would feed on a catfish. And I think certainly it would be more inclined and more happy to get its paws wet than a lion or a leopard. But again, I haven't seen any footage or documentation on that happening. So even though it's highly likely, I haven't seen that happen or heard of it happen in the past. Hyena will even be known to carry big bones and drop them into waterholes to keep them there, kind of like a pantry, because lion and leopard aren't going to steal them, and other hyena will battle to pick up the smell or exactly know where exactly it is. So hyena have been known to do that, and on a few occasions I've been lucky enough to see hyena walk up to a little mud wallow, plug their head in and pull out a large bone that they pull out and start feeding on. I guess it's not only a pantry but also a way of potentially softening the bone by letting it stew in the hot waters. Be worth keeping an eye out on the Juma cam for the hyena feeding on a catfish, so that's going to be our most likely spot where we could catch it. Oh, there's some beautiful clouds up and around us, so I think I might just stop for a cloud tour. Well, Ephraim's just bumped into 3 female lions that he thinks could be the Inkahuma pride. Very close to the Kruger boundary, probably about 3 or 4 kilometers north of where we are here. So not much good for us seeing them, but at least they're around. Great, well I hope you enjoyed that tour of the clouds. We're going to send you across to Jamie, who's found some zebra, as we continue patrolling for Karula.
Well, welcome back, and I'm on my way to the hyena den, and I happen to bump into a bunch of striped horses who are just off the road on Aubrey's Road and then linked to the hyena den. It's a nice little breeding herd. Now, unfortunately, he has vanished. I was going to try and find him again. It was a stallion with interesting leg patterns. His stripes almost faded completely. He barely had any stripes on his legs. And what makes that particular individual so interesting is you can really see where that quagga line came from. So a quagga was an animal that is now extinct that looked like a mixture between a horse and a zebra, because it was lacking stripes on the rear end and had a brownish shade to the rear end. And scientists or biologists determined that it was actually a subspecies of the zebra that we're looking at here. And it was only through, they think that their population bottlenecked at some point in their evolution to produce the half-looking horse-zebra mix, but was in fact a true plain zebra. I'm going to try and find him to show him to you, because he was so interesting, and you can see how it works in terms of how a couple of zebra like that interbreeding might make that mixture that was the quagga, spelt Q-A-G-G-A, I believe. See if we can try and get a glimpse of him once again. I think he might have headed back towards the road, which is good. Before I make my way to the hyena den. And nice to see zebra as well. Oh, it's a bumpy block. This block is particularly interesting. It's known as the block of the 20-point turn in my head, because there's no going anywhere quickly here. Slowly, bit by bit, is the way to do it. See if I can get that zebra back once again. Give it one good go before we head across to those hyenas. There you are. Please stay there. I'm going to get there. One view of our very interesting coloured zebra. Just keeps going ahead of me. Try and keep the momentum going so that he can. Where is he going to stop? Is he going to stop there, boy? Thank you. Let's have a look at him from here first, so we can get an idea of what it was I was talking about. And I'm hoping that one of the females is going to come out next to him so you can compare them. But look how faded his stripes are on his legs. He's hardly got any of them. Very interesting. It's not often that you see a plain zebra like that. Now the Cape Mountain zebra doesn't have stripes all the way down. So the other species of zebra that we get, that's one of the differences between a Cape Mountain zebra and a plain zebra. Off he goes. Well, at least we managed to get a good view of those legs. Very interesting to see. Oops, something startled the zebra. Could have been the hyena. They are looking in that direction. Hear the drumming of their hooves as they all ran. Yeah, look at how the stripes go down all the way on the others. Except actually that foal, who appears to have inherited his same coloration. Very interesting. These zebra are a little spooked, and I'm pretty sure that's because of the hyena. And whilst we have some light left, let's head across and see what those hyena are up to. I'm going to do yet another U-turn to get back onto the hyena road. Ah, that's a better spot, I think. Tree there, found a tree. Oh. Ah, it's a good thing I missed that. Oh, round we go, and back towards the road. And let's go see if those hyena are out and about and what they're up to. I'm almost certain that's what spooked the zebra and that they ran back the way they did. And I'm going to leave. There we go. This is the path I want to take. It's slowly starting to become a little bit easier to get in here. Thorn. I wonder how these hyena have spent their warm day. It's not uncommon for hyena on hot days like this to go and settle in a nice dam or a mud wallow. We haven't seen them at any of the dams that we've checked, but maybe they're headed up to Sydney's dam, which is much closer to here, to spend some time wallowing. Here we go, approaching the den. Check the entrance that they usually use first. I don't see any around here. Aha! Hello, monsters. Oh, good. We have got some of them out and about. Well, it seems as though Scott has found some elephants, and we're just going to wait for these little guys to settle, but we'll be right back here. The light's disappearing, so let's head across to Scott for now and catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And hasn't she got an interestingly shaped tusk curving up quite dramatically? It's a beautiful scene here, quite distinctive. I recognize her. I can't remember when last we saw her though. And as Jandre zooms out, you'll get to see the rest of her family. We've obviously just missed them having a drink at the Buffelshoek Waterhole. She's enjoying a dust bath. Look at how all of them have huddled up around these logs here. Isn't that awesome? Not sure what's caught their attention there. Obviously something of interest. Well, this big lady's coming up for a closer inspection. Hello. Are we in your way? I know Jandre doesn't have any fruit on him. We're at the end of our weekly supply and have run out of fruit. So it's not the sweet smell of a banana that she's interested in. Possibly this buffalo thorn tree that she's probing on here. What a beautiful scene this is with that sky in the background. Just going to roll forward a little bit. The rest of the herd are all huddled up there very closely. Let's try and work out what it is that they're doing. They can quite often use fallen down trees as rubbing posts, so that may be what's happening over here, but they don't seem to be rubbing. They just appear to be sniffing the ground quite intently. They will feed on sandy deposits to try and obtain extra minerals and nutrients, so that might be the case. I'm not too sure though. Wonderful, and they're all walking up just meters behind us here. Big Mummy giving us a close look. Hello. Apologies for the behind the scenes footage of the antennas and the ropes holding up the antennas. Evening, Andrew, go ahead. Andrew's just getting a hold of me on the radio. Affirmative. There's a lump and love that's slowly mobile north away from the dam. East, north and east. Okay, well, as wonderful as this elephant sighting is, there's also some awesome stuff happening across at the hyena den, so we're going to send you back there with Jamie. The light's fading quite quickly, so we need to make the most of it while it's still up.
Welcome back, and what perfect timing. The arrival of what looks like their mother. It was interesting. The little cub had come down to say hello to them. Oh, somebody got a nip. There's some greeting happening there. Hello, big girl. You're very pretty. And very dirty. You've been rolling in mud. That's what I was saying about them spending the day in the mud wallows. She's given us a perfect demonstration of that. Look at her. She's covered in mud. What you been up to, big girl? Here goes little one. Off round the back to follow on. I think they're just going to loop around to the back of the den now. This little one on the right has got an injury to the back of its leg, and also just a fraction of a limp. Oh, going to sleep. Looked a little bit uncomfortable. It's going to try and give it a bit of a wash. No, never mind. Not going for the injury. And that was most likely caused by interactions with the other hyena, especially when Mom isn't around. Now it looks as though the others have disappeared around the back. Luckily I know a secret pathway there, but let's stick with this little one. See if we can get a closer look at the wound on the back of its leg. Shame, Bubba. What happened to you? They've got such adorable faces at this age. Can you hear hippos calling? Getting ready to go out and about from Sydney's dam. We're not far at all from there. What's up, little one? Something's bugging you. Did you get nipped? Do you think there's something sore there? Oh, itchy. Now, it's very common for the hyena cubs when they are in conflict, especially with other members, with their siblings or their cousins, as well as from other adults who teach them discipline, sometimes quite harshly, to get a little nip or a little bite. And it often happens around the rear end. And I think that's what's happened to this little one. He or she is being put in his place. Might be a he, given that it has been bullied quite a lot. Now I want to catch up with the other hyenas and see what they're doing, so let's head across to Scott, who's got one last view of that bull in the sunset, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And there's one young bull trailing the back of the herd that's come to say goodnight to us. It's not actually the youngest of bulls, maybe just clinging on to the herd, but he should be moving on his own, but I don't think is big enough and old enough to be competing for mating rights. And now the only animal remaining at the waterhole is our friend Bob the hippo. And it's a beautiful still evening now. You can see the glassy still water here at the waterhole, and you'll maybe also briefly make out the hippo, but not looking promising. So we're going to send you back to Jamie with the hyena den.
Welcome back. And Mommy just made a sudden reappearance, still covered in mud. Where are you going, little one? What's happening back there? Oh, let's try and reposition. They're just tucked away. Now they're going to come out to us. Behind the apple leaf. Here's the littlest one coming. Also going to follow along behind, now covered as well in bits and pieces of mud from Mom. It's absolutely astounding how much they've grown. Oh, there's demonstration there of adult behavior. The one on the left started anal pasting. The other one went to go and have a sniff. Oh, a little bit of sibling affection there, with teeth involved. Oh, you are so brave, little one. Definitely one of the more dominant members of this clan, having inherited Mom's status, to go and tackle a bigger hyena like that. Okay. Oh, what you guys doing? You can see how covered in mud it is. Too sweet. Let's see what these guys are up to. Lots of action at the hyena den today. Plenty of excitement. That little one is so brave. Tackling much bigger opponents. Which is what makes me think it's a high-ranking offspring. Nipping. Oh my word. What you up to? Look at you. Interestingly, both the older and the younger cub have both tucked into this one individual, which is also what makes me suspect it might be a male. They're ganging up on it. There you can see what I was talking about. The rump often plays or comes victim to very sharp nips from little teeth, and there you've got a very good example of it. Nope, he's had it. I'm done. I'm going. Can you imagine how sharp those little teeth are? Now, chances are, the minute I reposition, they're going to come back. But let's give it a go. I'm just giving a scan quickly first. Okay, well, they appear to have ducked into that open gap that they really, really enjoy, which is just around the corner. Let's go and see if we can catch up with them there. Looks as though Mom went round back to her favorite part, which is behind the den. Just make sure I'm not going to crash into anything in this 20-point turn place in the dark. Oh, yes, well, hello little one. That is the only route I can take to get to the rest of the cubs, so let's settle here for now. A little bit more light. This is the one, I think, with the injured backside. Shame. Still something is hurting there. Having a quick lick. I think it is a little bit uncomfortable. Keeps worrying at whatever it is. I can't see any clear signs of injury, apart from a bit of an injury on the back. Our station's Misikai is active on Aubrey's Road. There's just another vehicle approaching. I'm letting them know that there is some action. Most of them have moved to the northwestern side of the den. Ooh, lots of nibbles there. I think it's been... That's affirmative, you're more than welcome. Sorry, just letting them know that they can come and join me. Shame. I think definitely been nipped a couple of times. I'm not quite sure what kind of run-in he had, but it was probably with an adult. He's got a couple of bite marks on the outside of that back left leg. And probably a few bites around his rear end as well. Definitely not nearly as comfortable or as mobile as the other cubs. I'm just going to take my light off him for a moment just to scan again at the front of the den to see if there's any sign of them on this side coming back. Doesn't look like it. Nope, back to this little guy. See, every time he goes to get up, that it obviously twinges a bit, and he sits back down. They don't look too serious, but he is showing signs of discomfort. Hello, little one. You coming back? You coming to say hello? Hello, monster. Oh. Going right there again. Get the little one's got this. Oh, oh! I think that hurt. Teaching little cub a lesson for overstepping the mark there. Shame, little one. What's wrong? They don't look too serious, but he doesn't look that, his back end doesn't look that stable. Not sure if you all can see what I mean, but he's almost struggling to put weight on his legs at the back. At the moment he's trying to get to a bite under his tail. Feeling very itchy. I'm not too sure what's happening here. I just get the impression that there's something a little bit offish with this cub. There's one or two small bite wounds around him, but barely visible. But he still looks uncomfortable. As it is, we're going to spend our last few moments of the sunset safari with him, just because I can't reposition at the moment. Not with him right there. I hope that he's okay. Just get the impression very strongly in his body language that something's not very comfortable. Maybe a pulled tendon. I'm not too sure. He's very focused on that area. Okay, well, standing okay, now looking okay. I'm still curious. Hey, little one. Also been in the mud, judging by the color difference between his legs and his shoulders. Back down again. Just not joining in with the rest of them in terms of running around and playing. That beautiful spot pattern is very distinctive. We'll always be able to recognize him on those spots on his back. But as we draw to a close of this sunset safari, I'd like to thank you all, as always, for joining us tonight and this evening. It's been a wonderful drive. It's still very warm. I hope that storm is on its way. And a big thank you to Andrew as well for all of his fantastic camera work this afternoon. And thank you to all of you for all of your really interesting questions and thinking a little bit deeper about the topics and the things that we're seeing. Well, anyway, we will catch you tomorrow morning for the sunrise safari. I'm going to pass you on now to Scott, who will say his final goodbyes. Have a wonderful day or night wherever you are in the world, and I will see you tomorrow morning.
Well, it is certainly a very peaceful evening here at the Buffelshoek waterhole. Those with some water thickneys, here they go again, that you can hear calling out. And you may also hear a young elephant bull slurping up some water in the shadows. You're not going to shine the spotlight on him. We're going to leave him in peace. But like I say, a beautiful evening here. Sadly, Karula did not poke her head over the dam wall like we were hoping for, but maybe we'll find her tomorrow. Time to say thank yous to everyone, and thanks very much to all of you guys for your contributions and for supporting us. Well done to Nikki and Jess in the final control room, as well as Jean-Dre, the cameraman with me this afternoon. He did a miraculous spotting of the triagama earlier, so that's his commendament, major commendament for the drive. And I think you may be getting the odd glimpse of that elephant getting lit up by a vehicle next door to us. Anyway, we're going to let you enjoy the peaceful tranquility for the last few seconds and see you all in the morning.